Since some people actually showed up.
Yeah, well, I've been here. I opened the door, so.
No, I know. It seemed like a light crowd.
No real music.
I know, I'm so glad to see you. I've seen you the last couple of weeks and I've had a chance to say hello. Always a pleasure.
And she can hear you today. I'm not really sitting here chatting. Oh. You're in my seat. I know. That's why I moved. I actually. Try to make it look better. Okay. That was under here. Oh my gosh. I start to put lipstick on and I think, what the heck are we doing that for? Oh, you had desserts. Yeah, we got it. Kind of kicked us in the butt. We weren't sick, we just wiped out. And our arms were, but we weren't sick. We just slept all day. It was really weird. We didn't have anything. It's supposed to be the same thing as the first shot. Yeah, it's just finally home. Yeah. You too. How's your daughter?
Yeah. Well, it just needs a little flow. It's healthy. This time of year, I got one thing about last 50 degrees. Like 75 is like cool with the air on, but it's hot. It's good to the air moving. That was cool. You got the blood pumping. Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad I did.
I don't want you up too. All right. Dragging in here by starting the prelude. Yeah. No. I got it. 1 minute. Morning, how are you? That's fast. When Frederick said it. How's he doing? That's why we got the yeah. No, we're good. Usually for enough years, you kind of get a little.
We should probably do find out what Green does for piercing shows. Once a month.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah. So it just puts a lot of pressure on her. That is her boss.
Well, that's why I told her, I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll just it's not a big deal.
I do these videos, just my selection process, but I did a review of that, which I edited and put on YouTube. But it'd be easier room to go for you. More time. I guess we get better at it.
Yeah.
We have Jackie now.
Well, a lot of it was just picking up which ones you like, but once you look through the videos we have for a while, you'll be like, oh, how about that one from last Easter? And that, you know, and I'm pretty proficient
And
at
that actually there wasn't that much to choose from.
it. Yeah.
I mean, it's this is good. Oh, I know.
Yeah. You got me beat. It's been a couple of years since I sat out here at England.
Yeah.
You know, I only came here for a week before they put me to work. Like, hey, here you go, take over. Who was that? That was Chris McAfee. Yeah, I just figured I'd mention. Well, if I see something, I'm just gonna tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most people came back after Elvis. Like, it dropped down to. And see, every Sunday, like Karina and I will stream it on our phones so that we get the hours and the clicks and the views on our YouTube channel because you build those up slowly. And you get more benefits as you do that. Right, so the more people that watch it, I'm like, you know, we're sitting there and I have 2 phones. So Karina and I stream on 3 devices.
I sure do. It works. Usually around noon. That's Jackie Robbins with the prelude. Thank you, Jackie Robbins. It sure seemed longer than when she's here in person for some reason. Good morning, and welcome to the Treasure Coast Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stuart, Florida. Today's November 14th, 2021. My name is Janet Grote, and I'll be your worship associate today. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome people of all gender identities, races, ages, and backgrounds. It's good to see all my vaccinated friends here in the sanctuary, although we are on YouTube also. YouTube visitors, to be put on our email list or to find out more information about us, go to our website at tcuuc.org. You'll get announcements in our Friday online newsletter. Get to know us a little bit better. Visitors, and I see we have a few returning snowbirds. If you're comfortable, please step up to the mic here and introduce yourselves. Yeah, I know.
We're Chris and Mary Bladen from the Unitarian Church at Washington Crossing, New Jersey. And we've been coming here for 30 years. We started when it was in a craft shop or something like that, a ways away. And so we feel like we're really part of you. And it's been a year, but we're here. And we're very happy to be here.
And people that know us, we're going through the metamorphosis right now. So we look a little bit different than we did last year.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Chris and Mary.
Thank you.
And I see some brand new faces.
Good morning. I'm Bill Cole. This is Nancy Pohida. We belong at the UU in Queensbury, New York. And we live in Stuart 7 months of the year and 5 months up in the Adirondacks. So this is our first time here, and we just want to thank you for welcoming us.
Yes, welcome. I think that's everyone. So for announcements, I think you're all knowing about our first and third Tuesdays at Stewart Memorial Park, downtown, noon. Our brown bag lunch, we just have good conversations and fun. So it's this Tuesday. We are going to have, we're going to be helping a Guatemalan immigrant family who had been separated at the border and finally reunited in Indiantown. This connection has come through the UUA's service committee. Linda Shuey has volunteered to lead our efforts in this. The North Palm Beach Church will be joining us in this endeavor. Of course, we need money to do this. So if you haven't already joined in this effort, There's some blank envelopes in the trays, and put Indiantown on it, and if you want, credit, put your name on it too, so we can get our accounting straight. Next Sunday, November 21st, our annual Interfaith Thanksgiving service will be held at 3 p.m. at the Methodist Church on Canner. Bob will be one of the participating clergy. This service will be advertised in our Friday update. There's also a sign out front for the details on it. And thanks to the man behind the curtain, Chris McGann, and in spirit to Jackie Robbins, and thanks to the Unitarian Universalist Association for our hymns. And although she's not behind the curtain today, Karina put a lot of effort into today's service. Our Reverend Randy Day will be in the pulpit today. Reverend Randy, come tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. I listened to the introductions. I think I heard Queens, right? So one of you said
Queensberry.
Oh, Queensberry. Okay. Where's Queensberry?
Next to Glens Falls, next to Lake George.
Okay. Upstate. Oh, we love upstate New York. All right. So I'll tell you quickly about myself. I grew up in central Illinois, about 50 miles south of Springfield, Lincoln area. Went to Illinois Wesleyan University, and they had a program, a junior year abroad program. I was exploring, but I found that the Presbyterians had a junior year abroad program. They took a Methodist in. I went off to the Philippines to Silliman University. I liked it so much I stayed there for my senior year and graduated. Took a number of courses in Southeast Asia studies and traveled around Southeast Asia a good bit during my 2 years there. While I was there, I was making my decision to choose a seminary. I wanted to go to seminary since I was in 8th grade, but the time came to choose one. I was looking at the 12 great United Methodist seminaries across the country, and I went to see my advisor, who was a UCC missionary there. And so he listened to my little spiel, and then I always remember what he said because it kind of changed my life. He says, "Why do you want to go to a second-rate Methodist seminary?" A little UCC jab there. He goes, "Harvard, Yale, Union, which I hadn't thought about. And so under his influence, I applied to Yale Divinity School, went off to New Haven, Connecticut, and spent most of my career in Connecticut and in New York City. I thought I heard Queens. I served in Astoria, Queens, Jamaica, Queens. I was a district superintendent of 3 of the 5 boroughs, Manhattan, Bronx, Staten Island, and Lower Westchester County, if anyone's from there. I did that for 6 years. And then I went to Connecticut and I served churches. And then at one point, for 7 years, I was the general secretary of the General Board of Global Ministries. That's the International Mission Board of the Methodist Church. So during that time, I did extensive travel around the world, visiting our missionaries, starting new churches. But where I threw in a lot of my personal energy, professional energy, was around responses to disasters. So after the tsunami hit Sumatra, we were there reporting on that. Katrina here in the United States, but also involved myself in diseases, what I call the diseases of poverty, which kill so many kids around the world. And I'll touch on that in my sermon. I'm officially retired as United Methodist pastor, and so I'm down here with Bob McDonald and other friends, and had coffee with him 2 or 3 weeks ago. He raves about this congregation, spoke very highly of all of you, so I'm really honored to be here today. I'm married, and my wife's a psychotherapist, works in Jupiter. We just moved here in July, moved to Florida in July. So it's good to be here. We have 5 children, 2 of whom are adopted from Haiti. I think that's enough. Thank you. Yes.
Wow. As we light this flame, we remember friends and loved ones near and far, and we give thanks. As the fire burns brightly, we open our minds and hearts to new ways of being, and we feel alive. As the room glows with warmth and kindness, we extend our circle ever wider to welcome those who come in, and we know love. We have it. And back a few days ago, of course, it was Veterans Day. So these words from Jennifer Cottrell are in honor of veterans. We remember those who joined the services by choice and those who had no choice. We remember those who fought in wars with just cause and those that had no just cause. We remember those who sacrificed their lives for wars they believed in, and those who sacrificed their lives for wars they did not. We remember those who have gone missing and who were never found. We pray for world leaders that make wise choices to prevent wars. We pray for those around the world who are currently suffering the ravages of war. We pray for peacemakers who strive for the end to conflicts around the world. We remember, and we pray for peace. I'm going to have a hymn now. I think we know the words. Sing through your mask. Well, we've got the words.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Let us recite our affirmation, speaking the first verse and singing the second, singing sadly through our Mass. The words will be up in a second, I believe. I think we know most of them. There we go. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Oh my, do we have music to go with this? Because you don't want to hear me singing. I might ask for a volunteer to, how about you, Tia? to come sing for us. I think I forgot to mention this to Karina.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung from every land by every tongue. Amen.
Now, let's share our joys and sorrows. Please come up to the microphone to speak and tell us your name first. And we're going to move a stone in our symbolic river of life to mark each joy and sorrow. Try to keep it personal and brief. Step forward to the mic.
I'm just here to move stones.
I'll take off my mask to speak. I'm Janet Rader, and several of you have asked. Jerry and I made a quick trip to Lexington, Kentucky when my daughter realized she had a hematoma in her colon and more or less put herself in the hospital. It was resolved, if that's a good word, pretty quickly. But we were there for a week, and I appreciate all the askings. One of the highlights of our trip, you might wonder exactly when the leaves are turning, but when we came back, which was a week ago, the leaves from Lexington to Atlanta were just spectacular. Just wonderful to see all the fall leaves. So thank you for your caring.
More joys? Any sorrows? For those whose joys or sorrows are too private to share, let you know that our hearts are with you. And now, Tia, again, she's going to speak a bit about veterans.
It's a little hard to follow that beautiful reading that she did about veterans. But as a veteran, I'm here to speak on behalf of veterans. I think we no longer have any in our congregation that might have served in World War I. We certainly do in World War II. The thing about the wars that we have been to is that each one of them have put different burdens on the people who served and the people who didn't serve. And still the most contentious war that we had is the one that I was serving during, which was Vietnam. I think we learned a lot from that. My fellow servicemen in Vietnam got treated very rudely when they returned. And I think, I didn't, most of us that were raised during the World War II generation, where we knew that serving was an honor and a duty to our country. And we went into Vietnam that way, except of course for those that were drafted. And we weren't treated that way when we came back. We learned from that. So even though the second Iraq War was probably one of the most unpopular wars that we've had, not President Bush the senior, but President Bush the junior. I myself even demonstrated against that war. We learned by that we didn't blame the people who participated, we blamed the people who created the war. So, and since then, we've had our world's longest war, our country's longest war, and one that has produced the most egregious head wounds and PTSD. And we're still trying to figure out how to deal with that. We're out of there. We left people that were friends and supporters, and we're home scattered all over the country with egregious wounds. So, on behalf of all of our veterans, could I see, by the way, those people, are there any veterans here? Would you say which service and which war? Marines in Vietnam.
Air Force, I spent time in Korea.
Air Force, Korea.
Army, I protected England.
Army in England. That's on the other hand. Well, and also those of us.
Bud.
All right, so we got 3 Marines, so that's enough to take the whole room. So. Now, and thanks to all of you who were the families and friends and supporters, because we know that we don't go in harm's way unless we have somebody that can support us. So thank you to all of you who served. Thank you to all of you who helped them serve. And today is actually officially Remembrance Day in England, so it's appropriate we do this today. So on behalf of all our veterans and all of our veterans' friends and family, thank you.
Thank you, Tia Breeding, longtime member of this church and lifelong UU. This is by Eric Williams. We'll have an image soon. Blessed is the sky and all that is warm and filled with light. Blessed is the air and all that is open and free. Blessed is the earth and all that is steady and firm. Blessed is the sea and all that is hidden and deep. This is in Pecos, New Mexico. Here we go. Spirit of Life will come up on YouTube, and we'll try to sing through our Mass with it too. I'll try to step back.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blowing rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Rules what we cross, we set them free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Time for the offertory. I'm going to ask the ushers to step forward. The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take the offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will be self-supporting of this church. Also, if you did want to donate to the Indiantown effort, there's the little envelopes, and raise your hand if we need to send the tray over to you. Anne, I think, has a contribution that should go in the little envelope. Janet, can you take that to Anne? Yeah, and yeah. No, a little one with no name on it. Yeah. Another one. 3. Okay. 4. Yeah. So, write Indiantown on it. If you would like credit, probably for the IRS, put your name on it and we'll do the accounting. If not, just going into the pool. The morning offering is received in the spirit of grateful fellowship. Thank you. And here is Reverend Day. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're going to have some music during the offering. There we go.
In 1882, Mark Twain traveled from his home in Hartford, Connecticut, back to his boyhood home in Hannibal, Missouri. And although the pastoral paradise had gone, he recalled many boyhood episodes. And I share with you now briefly one of those stories taken from the pages of Life on the Mississippi. When I was a small boy, Lem Hackett was drowned on a Sunday. He fell out of an empty flatboat where he was playing. Being loaded with sin, he went to the bottom like an anvil. He was the only boy in the village who slept that night. We others all lay awake, repenting. We had not needed the information delivered from the pulpit that evening that Lem's was a special case of judgment. We knew that. There was a ferocious thunderstorm that night. It raged continuously until near dawn. The winds blew, the windows rattled, the rain the rain swept across the roof in pelting sheets. And at the briefest intervals, the inky sky of the night, the darkness vanished, and the houses over the way glared out white and blinding for a quivering moment, and then solid darkness shut down again with a splitting peal of thunder. And I woke up thinking that the world had ended. I sat up in bed quaking and shuddering and waiting for the destruction of the world and expecting it. And every time the lightning glared, I caught my breath and judged I was gone. Now, most of us in our life, perhaps in childhood, perhaps in adulthood, have experienced severe storms. Fear is something I'm going to talk about this morning. Fear is a very real emotion for kids as well as for grown-ups. It can happen at any second when you're not expecting it. A truck swerves near you on 95 at high speed, and your whole life will flash before you in a couple of seconds. Some of us have feared for our jobs as well as for our lives. Others fear over other things, not like jobs or occupation or life, but smaller things. The fear of singing in public. Many of us have that. Many of us have that fear. There's the fear of fire. Fear of enclosed places. You may remember the time you accidentally got on a freight elevator and you already pushed number 3 before you realized it was the wrong elevator, and it slowly moved, and then it stopped with a jerk. But the doors didn't open, which seemed like a long time. You may remember things like that. The fear of parallel parking. The fear of dogs. Fear of dogs. Yeah, one of our sons just went through the whole get my license in New York State before we left. So we did a lot of parallel parking last spring, I'll tell you that. So I know you have a air show going on, right? For 2 or 3 days, still going on today? So I've had pilots in my congregations who were great pilots. They flew for Eastern. Anybody remember Eastern? They flew for Pan Am. They flew for all these different airlines, some that we still have, some we don't have. But a number of them were afraid to be on a stepladder. So we all have our sets of fears. We may agree or disagree as to what are major fears and what are minor fears, but each of us will have our own set, probably more than one, but a set of fears. In addition to this individualism, entire nations have had fears of invasions. I love history. Those of you who know history, you can choose the country, you can remember the invasion, you remember the fear that they went through. Today, there's a fear. One of my fears is we'll have another nuclear accident like 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl. Those things are a fear of mine. Or a fear of accidental war. Some of us fear another 9/11. We think about it every anniversary. I know we have some New Jersey folks here. Those of us from the greater tri-state area up there, as well as others across the country. You can't help thinking about it sometimes. And now we have COVID, and we have the Delta variant, and we wonder if more variants are coming along, and we worry about our relatives in ICU. We worry about those who can't get into ICU with heart, cancer, other issues because all the beds are taken up. It's getting a little better, but it's been a very difficult time for us. So those fears are very real. There's also the fear of hunger. Sometimes it's hard for us to relate to that. Most of us are trying to lose some weight or whatever. But I remember a story, not a story, but I remember something that happened to me in Rio de Janeiro. I was there years ago, and I was by myself, and I had wanted to go up into the favelas, the little villages, not villages, but the mountainside residents, the people put together with anything they can find. Maybe some of you have been there. And so I found a guy from a school somewhere, a contact I had, and he agreed to take me, be my guide, and up we went. We went all day. We visited clinics. I was interested in clinics, schools, all kinds of things. I was interested to see how do those communities function. And they do it very much like a congregation or other communities. They had all these services going on, even though they were in illegal places. And so we did that all day. Came down, said goodbye to the guy. He dropped me off, and I was walking back to my hotel along the street, really tired. And there was a coffee shop, a restaurant with outdoor seating. So I said, I'm going to stop. I was so thirsty. So I stopped. I sit down. I ordered some coffee. I had a book that I'd been reading with me. So I pulled the book out and I started reading, just resting my feet and getting some coffee. And suddenly these children came by and they were trying to sell me something. It was all rolled up, looked like, newspapers. And I don't read Portuguese, so I said, no thanks. Oh, they were very insistent. Nice, but insistent. And then they sort of opened the top of the rolled-up newspaper, and I looked inside, finally, and said, oh, peanuts. They were selling peanuts. Well, I didn't really want any peanuts in a rolled-up newspaper either, so politely said no. And then something hit me. I still don't know what it was, the grace of whatever. And so I was at a table for 4, so I invited the 3 children to sit down. 2 girls and a boy. I'm pretty sure they were sisters and brother. I had them sit down. I called the waiter over and I asked for menus. Oh, the waiter was unhappy. I'm sure he spent most of his day shooing these kids out of here. They're always pestering, the tourists and others, asking for handouts or selling peanuts. No, I said, so he brought menus. They looked at it. They were bilingual menus. And I was like, I don't know what they're going to order. You know what they ordered? They all 3 ordered spaghetti. So we chatted. Well, we couldn't really chat, but they drew on napkins. They drew pictures for me. They borrowed my pen. They drew little pictures on the white napkins, paper napkins. And pretty soon, these huge platters of spaghetti came out, set in front of the 3 of them. And they started eating. And I knew that they were hungry. These are street kids. They were hungry. Conversation stopped. They were devouring the spaghetti, devouring it. So I glanced at my book. I wasn't staring at them, just watching, And pretty soon the older girl, who had finished about half her plate, suddenly stood up with her plate, and she walked right down kind of the aisle between these chairs and away from the restaurant. It all happened so fast, there's nothing I could do. She wasn't my child. It wasn't a total responsibility. Anyway, she was gone with the plate. The other 2 kept eating. We sat there. In about 10 minutes or so, she came back. The plate was empty. So I know to this day that she took the rest of that food for her mom, her parents, another kid, I don't know who, but I'm sure they're living on the street. And she found them and she shared the food. So after she'd come back, she sat down, and pretty soon they finished, they were done. And suddenly they just stood up and they came over to me, and each girl kissed me on one cheek. The little boy was way too shy. And then they turned and they walked down that same kind of aisle, and they disappeared into that warm Brazilian night, and I've never seen them again. But, they live in my heart. And I think of them, and I think of the millions of kids around the world, some here in the United States, some here in Florida, who don't have enough food. So there's that fear of hunger, real fear that these kids live with every day. Where's the next meal coming from? If I get a hold of some spaghetti, I'm going to share it with someone. But there's a fear. and the fear from the parents, certainly. How do I feed these kids? Another quick story, going from Brazil, just let's cross the Atlantic and go into Angola in Africa. I've spent quite a bit of time, 26 trips to Africa, almost all mission related. And one of the things that we worked on, the Methodist Church, but Lutherans and many others, was on malaria. And what I found out was that one child out of 5 under the age of 5 in sub-Saharan Africa dies of malaria. I had no idea. But I learned this from a meeting of a bunch of bishops one day. We were all together, and during a break, I just said to them, we were going through some big, long 3-day agenda, all kinds of church business. And during this break, I'd been reading about malaria, but I hadn't really incorporated the meaning into my soul, my system, I guess. And here I was in Africa, so I asked them instead of just reading things in New York. So I said, my question was, I understand malaria is still an issue here. Oh my goodness, they all started talking at once. I had 3 translators with me from New York, for French, Spanish, and English, because we had bishops from all over the continent. So they all started speaking at the same time. Translators are doing the best they could. And finally, the bishop from Mozambique, who I had known, a big guy with a really deep voice, middle-aged guy, he couldn't contain himself. He stood up. He started talking. So the others kind of relaxed. He went first. And he said, I've had malaria 17 times. My niece died of malaria. My superintendent has malaria right now. He rattled off all these personal statistics. And so that motivated me. What's that like? So in Angola, a couple of years after that, we were in a hospital where the bishop had a long agenda to show us around, but we had a little break at lunchtime, and I'd been talking to the bishop's wife. She's a doctor. And so and she said she worked in a hospital down the street. So I said, well, can we go to the hospital during our hour break rather than just hanging around this hotel? I said in a nice way. She was honored. Off we went. So obviously they didn't know anyone's coming, this Western delegation, I think there were about 7 of us. We went into this government-related hospital, which are usually not anywhere near most of our church-related hospitals, so it's tough going. So we went from one ward to the other. We came into this ward, and there were 2 women sitting in chairs back here. I didn't notice them at first. One of them was crying, but I just really noticed. But up here on this table was a small child, probably about 14, 16 months old. And we went right over to the child, the doctor, and there was another person showing us around, I think also a doctor. They were concerned right away. So they called someone else in, and they're all speaking in Portuguese, but there was a crisis here. And then I sort of saw the 2 women. I realized one was crying. What had happened was this little boy had malaria, and I backed away, and so we left the room, and the boy died about a minute later. I mean, just really died in front of my eyes. I was saying a silent prayer. The story we found out was that they had walked 2 days to get to this hospital. It was the mother and the grandmother. They'd walked 2 days carrying the little boy to get to the hospital. And then as we probed a bit, the doctor told us, the thing is, there's a fear of hospitals with the people, especially in the rural areas. They are afraid of the hospital because the hospital is a place where you go to die. Because their experience is that's where people die. So they waited too long, so we could be and it's very easy to be kind of judgmental. Well, if they hadn't waited 2 days for having it, well, they probably waited a week or so before they started the 2-day journey. If they hadn't waited so long, the little boy would still be alive. No one said that, but I know some people in my group were thinking that. And then when we stopped to think about it and process it, dwell down upon it a bit, you could understand the fear. So when you come to issues like fighting malaria, it's not only the bed nets, really important, spraying the mosquitoes and all that, but there's the education component. And we found that congregations throughout Africa were very important for that. One was to try to get over the fear of going to hospitals. Another was not to throw out a lot of water, in the village and have little puddles of water. You want to get rid of all that standing water. That's where the mosquitoes breed. So there's an education unit that goes along with a more scientific medical unit. And churches and congregation had a huge piece to play in that. So fears, justified or unjustified, real or imagined, often immobilize us, as the fear immobilized those women. Our own priorities can become distorted. Our vision becomes blurred. So we ask ourselves the question, like, okay, Pastor, here you are there any answers? And I would just say, well, one of the best places to turn to, is the Scripture. Scriptures from different religions, but certainly looking into some of our own historic religions. If we look at the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scripture, we find that the word fear and its synonyms, reverence, awe, dismay, dread, distress, trouble, and terror, occur several hundred times in the Hebrew Scripture and more than 100 times in what we call the New Testament. So fear, distress, dismay, they're all suggested by different words in the Bible: trembling, quaking, shaking, quivering, shuddering, reeling, hair bristling, twirling, and whirling. They're all in there. They're all related to fear. And the Bible does give us some guidance. We need to separate secular fear from theological fear, and I'll try to do that quickly. Secular fear, we all have those. You're taking a French test and they ask you to conjugate some obscure verb, and fear overcomes you. You can hardly get through the rest of the test. You lose your wedding ring down the sink. Your child rolls off the dressing table and you're fearful of a concussion. We all have these fears all of the time. The biblical characters had theirs too. Cain fears for his life as he travels about, knowing anyone who sees him and identifies him might slay him. Jacob fears the avenging of his own brother Esau. Later, he's afraid to immigrate to a new country. Amos talks about the shepherd who's afraid of the roaring of the lion. And in the New Testament, we have several examples when when the authorities were afraid of the people. Remember that? Remember Joseph went off to Egypt with Jesus when he was a toddler because they wanted to get away from Herod and all that. So they feared they feared for their lives and had to leave the country. So of all these fears, we will add the fear of death. In ancient times as well as in our own time, the fear of death probably is the number one secular fear. And no matter how we think we have conquered it intellectually and in many other ways, it still is very much a part of our own lives. And many of us can testify that. So the list of secular fears goes on and on. In the New Testament, in 1 John 4:18, there's a great verse. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. 1 John 4:8. And there's a lot of controversy over who wrote 1 John. I'm not going to get into that. But there is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. It seems so elementary. But the psychiatrists, maybe we have psychiatrists here, the psychiatrists will tell you there's truth in this because love eliminates these fears I'm talking about. Eliminates them, or at least reduces them, and puts it all on a more solid plane where the self-centeredness is not taking over. Love spreads you out. You're thinking about other people. I saw you greeting one another when you came in this morning. That's what love in practice is about. You're not just thinking about yourself. When you're just thinking about yourself, guess what? The fears can come in. You're going to worry about this. You're going to worry about that. You won't do anything. You won't get out. You won't move around. Some people today are almost afraid to say anything. And I think it's even stronger in the younger generation. Your children, your grandchildren, social media is very fast to criticize. And the kids who are in the junior high kids, as well as the kids in college. I have two sons in two different colleges right now. And I know from their testifying, other things I read, is that students are very kind of reluctant to jump into the debate like many of us would, because that's how we were raised. That's how we were taught to use our brains and talk and to speak up. But, if you say something someone disagrees with, it's on social media before you're back at the dorm. You can be shut down from your social groups. You can have people staring at you or saying something to you by the time you go to lunch at the cafeteria. It's a very real issue now for many of those young people, and so many college students say, well, I just don't speak up. I'm just not saying too much, which really, really is a tragedy, because why else would we be going to college if we're not there to share some of those ideas? I think sometimes we're almost afraid to laugh. I'm going to tell you a story very quickly. I'm running out of time. The air show made me think of a story back in Illinois. I told you I grew up there. Illinois has a state fair like many other states. Big. They say it's the largest agricultural state fair in the country. I'm sure Iowa says the same thing in Indiana. Anyway, Illinois claims this. Years ago, there was a couple lived out on a farm. Talking way out there. Gertie and Fred. They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't get to travel much. I love that story, Lexington to Atlanta, looking at the leaves. Who told that story? Right here. Yes. Gorgeous. I can picture it. But they didn't get to travel much, but they went to the state fair every year. They'd see the big butter cow. They would see this. They would see that, and all the machinery. They'd see they just ate it up for 3 days. So one year they went, and there was a helicopter there. Never seen a helicopter before. Big sign said, rides for $50. Oh, that's what Gertie wanted to do. She'd never been on a plane. She'd never been off the earth. She wanted to ride that helicopter. Fred said, no, $50, even for the two. $50 is a lot of money. Anyway, next year, same thing. Next year, same. Third year, they're there, and they are arguing in the same argument they've had the last couple of years. The pilot, young guy, he's been there all these years, he heard it, and he'd heard this before. They were arguing. He came over and he says, listen, I'm going to make you a deal. I've heard you talking. He says, I will take you up for a ride, and it won't cost you a thing as long as you agree not to say one word. Oh, they agreed right away, both of them. Got in the helicopter, up they went. Flew around the fairgrounds, and then they went over Lincoln's tomb, and then they went out over some cornfields, and he decided to have a little fun. I know we have somebody in the Air Force, I know a pilot now, but anyway, he tips the helicopter this way, and then he jerks it down, jerks it up, turns it this way. Oh, what a ride. Went back to the fairgrounds, he set it down, turned the engine off, and he said, I just can't believe you guys didn't say one word. And Gertie said, well, I almost said something when Fred fell out. But $50 is $50, she said. So I think we shouldn't be afraid to laugh. Because in this day and age, I just want to end up with this. There are a lot of people out, talk show hosts and politicians and religious leaders and a lot of other people who are really playing on our fears. We have to be careful with that, because when we don't have love, perfect love or basic love, we tend to be suspicious of one another, don't we? And then someone comes along and feeds us a whole bunch of stuff in our brain. It's not good. We start living in these separate camps. It's not good at all. So what we want to do is to stay in community with one another. It's my final thought. The best way to fight these fears, and if you have some phobia or something, I'm not saying don't. My wife's a psychotherapist. Go see a psychotherapist, work on your phobia. But I'm just talking in general about these fears. Don't become isolated. Stay in touch with one another. And don't be susceptible to all these people saying you should fear this and you should fear that. Just stay grounded. Stay grounded. I checked some other scriptures too. I'll just say in the Quran, there's a lot of emphasis on, it mentions, I quote, that people shall have no fear and they shall not grieve. So the Quran was concerned about fears. And there's one Buddhist book called In Dealing with Fear by Ringu Tulku. And he talks about the Buddhist way of dealing with fear. It's not so different than Western medicine and the way we go at it, although in the end they dig down really deep and just try to get rid of the very thing that's scaring you to begin with. So if you can go down deep enough and find what they would call enlightenment, liberation, you will get rid of those fears. It's not a bad thing at all to kind of analyze it. What is it eating away at you? And be grounded and have a lot of love for yourself, love for other members of the congregation and the community. That's my assignment I'm giving to you in closing. May you have a very meaningful week. And now for our final hymn. Thank you.
Gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing. Oh Lord, you gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance. Oh Lord, you gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you gotta laugh. Oh Lord, you gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. 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 You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you gotta shout. Oh Lord, you gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
Now, our benediction. Upon leaving one another, may we give of hand and heart. Let us share our benediction lovingly before we part. And after the postlude, Jackie's going to do that too. But we can go ahead and go out and have some water and cookies. The patio's open. Let's have some conversation.
You did a great job. And so did our tech guy back there.
Yeah, he's volunteer too. So. Yeah, he's volunteer. We do,
Quite a few people here.